Alright, so we're going to do a 3-month review on this amplifier. Alright, so I'm going to go over all kinds of stuff. So let's start with why I bought this amp. Why I got a Blackloop. Well, I got a Blackloop because one of the reasons was it was the least expensive of what he had to offer. And I already had an amplifier that was a really good amplifier, and I just really didn't want to spend any more than what he was charging. And also I got the Blackloop because I'm not really much of a reverb kind of guy. If I do use reverb, it's very small amounts and it's really subtle in the background in my mix. So that's was the reason why I got the Blackloop instead of get the reverb one. Just because I picked red plate, it was because I heard good things about it, and that was the main reason why I went with red plate. Okay, so let's go over the amps that I've had over the years. The first amplifier that I started out with was a JCM 800 back in 1983, I believe, by the time I got my amp, somewhere in there. And it was a combo 2-speaker, and it was good. I played some rock. I wasn't really much into the hairband stuff. I was into Rush a lot. I played a lot of Rush. I was in a trio, and we did that. Then I eventually sold that and didn't have an amp for years, and then I got a Mesa Boogie amplifier back in 2000. And I had that for many years. Then I didn't like the sound. It was starting to get dated. I was buying pedals and it just wasn't happy. So then I decided to get another Mesa Boogie. And John Petrucci had come out with one, the JP2C. So I bought that one. And that is a fantastic amp. That thing is great. And, well, I was buying a lot of equipment and I was finally thinking, well, I would like to get one more tube amplifier that's going to be a good tube because I bought some other digital equipment, so I wanted to just one last time buy an amplifier, a tube amp. So like I said, I looked around for quite a while, a year or so, and settled on red plate. Alright, so there's my explanation of why I've got what I got here. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to go over each thing, what I use it for, and kind of how I use it. So I'm going to move the camera in so we get a little bit better view of what I'm looking at here. Okay, so the first thing, we're just going to start right out from left to right. Okay, so of course the input, use it as the input. Alright, so now the next thing is the bright switch. You can see that I've got it in the middle, so there is no bright switch engaged. It depends on what I want to do. You know, how bright I want it, how twangy, whatever. So I like it. I rarely use the second setting that's the brightest or most treble-y sounding. I usually have it in the lower one if I am going to use it at all. Like I said, it all depends on what I'm looking for. And it works good. It's not overly, it doesn't make it too crispy or anything like that. And I think it works really well. Okay, so the next one would be the volume. Now this volume is a good volume. You can run the amp several different ways. You can hit it hard by turning this way up, and it pushes the amp a little harder. But there's combinations you can use. You can use the, master, turn that up and turn the volume way down and have the master way up. Well, the only thing that happens there is you get a lot of noise through your speaker because you got the master turned way up. But it works that way. If you, for some reason, you want some extra sound coming out of it, my opinion is that this amp has plenty of volume and plenty of gain for most applications, and it works great. Okay, so now treble. I usually just keep it set about 11 o'clock. I'm not too much of a treble kind of guy. I don't need a lot of treble. Plus I've got this switch, and you'll see what else we've got. We got the mode switch. So that's about all I can say about the treble. Okay, so we go to the mid-range. The mid-range, once again, I usually run that probably about 4 o'clock or 11 o'clock once again. And yeah, it depends on the application. Okay, so now let's move it over and we'll do the bass. The bass I normally don't use very often. I've got, if you go turn the bass off, you get the bypass. It bypasses the tone, goes from the volume all the way over to the master. And a lot of times that's normally where I run it. As long as I'm not running a whole lot of gain, that's the way I usually run it, with the bypassing the tone knobs. I like the sound that comes out of my pickups, and it sounds good. The only thing I have is when I'm running my humbuckers, sometimes this amp gets a little, what some people call loose, flabby, spongy sounding, and I don't like that. I like a nice tight bottom end as much as I can. So I will usually just do this. I'll turn it on and then run it about right there, depending on, once again, how much bass I want. And that will help tighten the bass up, because now I'm going through the circuit, using the circuit. Okay, now I forgot about the treble knob here. We've got the depth right there. So you pull that out. I have never used that. It does something, but I've personally never used it, so I can't really comment a whole lot on what that switch actually does. It works. You can tell when you turn it on or pull it out that it does something, but it's not really a sound that I'm looking for. Even with the single coils to kind of deepen it up a little bit, I think this amp has enough rich sound coming out of it already. Alright, now let's move on to the mode switch right here. Alright, here's the mode switch. Okay, now this is the most treble sounding of the mode switch. It says funk on it, and it is that. It thins it out. It's kind of almost like the bright switch, in my opinion, to a certain degree. I'm sure there's different frequencies and that type of thing. So, and then as you dial it, turn it each one, it gets a little more mid-rangey and a little more mid-rangey till you get around to where it says fat. Okay, so you get a little less treble, a little more mid-range sound. Not so much bass, I would say a little more mid-range, and then you hit fat. And that mode there, what that does is that takes some of the tone stack out and adds, it's a mellower sound, especially if you're using a single coils. They're not quite as twangy and not quite as bright. I haven't really used that mode a whole lot. I normally run it about right here, somewhere in there, depending on what I want for sound. But normally that's about where I run it, with humbuckers and single coils. Okay, so now we go to the drive side of things. Okay, so we got the gain. And the gain is the first stage of gain. So depending on how much gain you want, you just turn it. And this will shut it off. If I go all the way to 0, it'll shut the gain off. So if I don't have the switch in, I got to remember and want clean, I got to turn that all the way off. Otherwise, you're always running through the drive channel. So normally I run it depending on how much gain I want, how loose I want the amp to be. This amp, as I said, to me sounds a little spongy, a little loose sounding in the bass, and that's not really my thing. I'm not kind of into that vintage sound. I like a more modern, tighter sound. So once again, I use these two together, and I can also use the volume knob too, depending on if I really want to get some extra muscle coming in. I just turn the volume knob up. So that's the three that I use for that section the most, is the input volume, the gain, and the drive. And I just kind of mix how I feel the amp should be for the particular sound I'm looking for. The drive is got plenty of drive. You can pull it out. They'll add some more gain to it, more drive to it. And sometimes I use that like that, sometimes I don't. I consider this amp more from a very clean platform to kind of like a rock, maybe even hard rock. I've got a guitar that's kind of directed towards heavy metal sound, and it gets kind of in there. It's not a heavy metal amp, but I can kind of get there with a boost pedal and stuff like that. And I usually don't try to run a pedal unless there's a certain sound that I'm trying to get texture wise. I usually try to find my sound without a boost pedal, but if I feel that I need to get it, I will. There's a boost on the switch, foot switch, that works pretty good. But there's no real control to that. When you hit the boost, it just boosts it. So sometimes it pushes it into that more spongier, flabbier sound, and that I don't really want. So the next one is the level. That works really good. It does what it says it does. It's got, depending on how much you want to go out to the speaker, it works great. Now above it says high cut. You just pull that out and it cuts the highs. I don't use that. I just run my other controls the way I want. If I don't want so much brightness, I might just turn the bright switch off. And if I am running the tone stack, then I'll turn the treble down a little bit. But normally I just use the mode switch for that type of thing. If I want to kind of back off, I'll turn it that way, and that'll back off the highs. And there's a lot of versatility to this amplifier. I really like it. I think it was a good buy. Okay, so now we go to the presence knob. I normally have the presence off. That's just the way I like it. The presence does work if you like that type of thing. I think it has something to do with negative feedback, if I remember correct. But don't quote me on it. I think that's what it's all about. And that's normally what I do. For this amp, I don't really like the presence. It's got enough character to the amp already. I don't really think the presence adds any extra anything to it, personally. Alright, so then we'll go to the master. Okay, so the master is just like what it sounds like. It is your master output. And it works great. I mean, you can go anywhere from, if you got a baby in the room next door with the drive turned way up and you've got a lot of gain going and you're rocking and rolling, you can have it whisper quiet. But the amp, if you just turn that up a little bit, would be like roaring. I think the loudest I ever had it in full gain rock mode is probably about somewhere in there. I live in a small apartment. The room that I have is about 12 by 22 and it's all plastered walls, and I have some foam around the speakers or the speaker, so it's has a little bit of sound deadening to it in that area, and this amp is loud. My JP2C is a very loud amp, and as far as I'm concerned, this amp for this room kicks out easily that much volume without barely turning the master up. But like I said, if you want it whisper quiet, you can turn it down. This thing works great. Okay, so here's the back side of the amp. The first thing I like is I like this reddish color. I like that. That's kind of cool. It fits in with the red plate vibe. I like that. I think that's really cool. Got a nice heavy duty, I don't know if that's the transformer or what it actually is, because there's another one back in here, so I'm not an amp tech. So whatever these are, they're well made and by a good company. And I've looked them up and done research on it before I bought the amplifier. And as far as I'm concerned, everybody says nothing but good things about these products that they put in the red plate amplifiers. Alright, so we're going to do it again. We're just going to zoom in and we're going to start from one side to the other. Plug in, works great. I haven't had any problems with it. Your power switch, okay, it is what it is. High power, low power. I've used it just to see what it does, but normally I just keep it on high power because it's only 2 output tubes. So, and I like as much headroom in my amplifiers as I can get, even if I am running a lot of gain in it. I just like that sound that you get. Okay, so then let's move into this section here. Okay, so we've got the line out for like recording. I have my Fractal FM3 that I use for my effects. I like to run a wet-dry outfit, keep my guitar signal clean or pristine going into the speaker that is running the main guitar sound out of, and then I run the line out into my FM3, and I run effects through the FM3 into another cabinet that's got a built-in amplifier to it, so I can run everything separate, and then that way I can dial in as much as I want, because there's times where I want, let's say a certain delay has the trails and all the stuff that you want. You can get that out of it, and you can get the amount that you want just by using, like I said, a different amplifier. And then I can, if I really want the trails to fit in there, but I want it to just be subtle in the background, that's the way I like my effects, then I can have that. All I got to do is just turn down the output signal in the FM3 and the way I go. Or I can turn it up if I want more. I just have the setting on the FM3 more. Okay, so now the external cabinet, never used it. I'm sure it works great, but I've never had any instance to use it. I always use the main, and that's pretty much the main, you know, so don't know what to say. Okay, so now let's just for a quick one look at the tubes. Alright, so this is the tubes that it come with, and as far as I'm concerned, they're good tubes. I did replace these with some tubes that I got from Mesa Boogie. They're a vintage tube that the JP2C has in it. I put them in, and I really didn't hear much difference. I mean, it pretty much sounded the same amplifier as it did with these tubes here. So I'm just going to run these tubes until they don't work, and then I've got plenty of 6L6s because that's what my other amplifier runs, and I'll just put them in there and down the road I go. Okay, so let's get back to the controls here then. Alright, so we've got the ohm selector switch. Let's see if we can get the numbers in there, but it goes from 2, 4, and 8. And I keep it at 8. That's what my speaker is that I run. It's a Mesa Boogie cabinet, recto, 14 inches deep with a V30 in it. And that's what it is. It's 8 ohms, so I keep it at 8 ohms all the time. And I'm sure the other things work just as well, settings. Alright, so let's move on. Okay, so first let's do the effects loop. Return and send. Okay, I've used it a couple of times with a digital delay that I have, and it works great. I mean, it sounds good. If I was just going to do a quick grab and go kind of thing to go jam with somebody and didn't want to bring my FM3 to run the effects and all the extra amps and cabinets you got to carry, I would use it. It sounds good. You know, all I got to do is turn the level down on the effects if I don't want it to be quite so predominant, and the way you go. So as far as I'm concerned, the effects loop works really good. It's not noisy. It runs the effect that I'm running through it just fine. I don't have any problems, no qualms. Okay, so here's the smooth switch. Now what that does is, to me, is kind of like another kind of EQ thing. It's one's a little brighter, one's a little not quite so bright. So that's the way I look at it. I don't really use it personally. I've got it in the off position. I have tried it a few times, and it's in some of the one of the videos that I used when I go through everything. So to me, it's, you know, it's another tonal option. If I had pickups or something that I was having a hard time trying to get a certain sound to come out of it, it's an option. I like options. You know, as long as it doesn't distract or retract from the sound that you're trying to get, options are good in my opinion. Okay, so now we'll go to here. Here's the humbucker settings. Now you can kind of see what that is. I always keep it in the humbucker setting. That's this one here. There's a single coil setting, and then there is the fat switch setting, and they both do what you think it does. Single coils kind of thin the sound out. Fat kind of rounds the sound out, so it's not quite as twangy. But I normally just keep it there, and I use the front part of the amplifier to adjust what I want. And then you got the foot switch plug-in. That's pretty much what you think it does. Okay, here we are with the foot switch again, and it does like what you think it should. It's got nice robust switches on it that switch on and off just fine. Metal housing on it. I'm sure it's very durable and will last me as long as it needs to last. Okay, the mid-range does what it says it's supposed to do. It adds some mid-range, helps cut through the mix, especially when I'm using the drive channel and I want a little extra mid-range because it might be getting a little muddy on me. I kick that in and it does what it's supposed to do. Drive, once again, does what it says it should. Turns on the drive channel, and you know, there's no real controls on this. It just either turns it on or turns it off. And then the boost switch. That adds, it depends on how you have the amp set, how much volume comes out. In some settings, it really gets loud or louder. and other settings, it really doesn't do a whole lot. It all depends on how you have the amp set up. So that is the Blackloop. Okay, so there's the Blackloop, and I am happy that I purchased this amplifier. It's, as far as I'm concerned, it's quality. I get all the sounds I want. I can go from pristine clean to a good rock sound. Like I said, I'm not too much into the sponginess. I can add a boost pedal if I want to add a little extra tonal dimension to kind of take down the sponginess, hairiness, whatever you want to call it, and run a tighter bottom end. But most of the time I can run this amplifier without any pedals and it sounds great. I've played for 50 something years and played through a lot of different amps, and I'm very happy that I bought this amplifier. And I'm sure it'll be the last tube amp that I'll ever need, and I would recommend it to anybody that's looking at different amps, different companies, that this, you can't go wrong as far as I'm concerned. They've got several different models, and I know that they will do custom stuff for you to a certain degree, because I asked him certain things when I ordered it. So make the phone call, send him an email, and I'm sure things will work out great for you, because I had no problems with it. Yes, it did take a while. It was 7 months from the time I ordered it to the time I got it, but I have no regrets. It come with a lot of extra stuff that adds to the value, in my opinion, and I think the price was great, personally. Okay, so red plate. Give it a try if you don't already have one. Alright, so you have a good Thanksgiving. Peace to you all.